What's up YouTube? It's Adrian. Let's jump right into it. So last video, which is linked here or here, I asked you guys what you wanted to see next in this video. So Taylor Kohler actually said that she wanted to see a video on credit scores. So here we are. So the main point of this video is to explain how your credit score is calculated, but first I want to explain what your credit score is from the ground up. So the concept of a credit score is to act as a grading system for banks, loan companies, and credit card companies to know how well you handle debt. This way they can loan you money with less risk of not getting their money back. So in practice, this means the higher your credit score is, the lower the amount of interest you're gonna have to pay on your loans and debts. In other words, the higher your grade is, the less risk you are. Your grade equals your score, and your risk equals your interest. So your credit score can range anywhere between 300 and 850. Typically, these scores are referenced in category ranges of each other. So those are typically 300 through 579 being considered very poor, 580 and 689 being considered fair, 670 and 739 being considered good, 740 and 799 being considered very good, and 800 through 850 being considered exceptional. Falling in and out of these ranges can result in you being able to qualify for a credit card or a loan at all, or with varying interest for that loan. So the question is, how are these scores calculated? And this is actually where you get to see the beautiful part of capitalism and then the American spending habits. Just a little intervention. If you like this topic, go ahead and like the video here and subscribe if you haven't. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and it gets this message out to more people that need to hear it. Thank you. You see, you don't have one credit score. You have two credit scores across 3 different companies and bureaus. So technically you have 3 credit scores. Is that complicated yet? So here's a breakdown. There are 3 credit bureaus and you may have heard of them before. Those are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And these companies are responsible for tracking and reporting your credit. Each of these companies utilizes one of the 2 different credit models. So the 2 most popular credit models is your FICO score, which stands for Fair Isaac Corporation, and your Vantage score. So each of these models are updated as times go on to keep up with current trends and then the current economy. What that means in practice is that Equifax could use the 2nd iteration of the FICO score, TransUnion could use the 3rd iteration of the FICO score, while Experian is using the 2nd iteration of the Vantage score. If you're ever curious, a quick Google search should be able to tell you which current model the respective credit bureau is currently using. So these models have one specific goal in mind, and that's to tell whoever's asking the credit bureau the possibility that you will fall 90 days behind a payment within the next 24 months. And if that isn't confusing enough, FICO actually has banking and automobile scores, which are similar to the model, but more tailored to those specific industries. And by that I mean they tweak the factors that make up your credit score to be better representative for those specific types of loans. So to review, there are 3 credit bureaus that uses 2 different types of credit models. So with that understanding, let's go into what actually builds your credit score. So the 3 factors that have the highest impact on your credit score is your payment history, your credit card utilization, and how many derogatory marks are in your credit report. So payment history is a percentage of the amount of times you've paid your debt on time. So this is a very sensitive factor. A 99% payment history will drop your score a decent amount. So it's always important to pay your debts on time because it's never going to get back to 100%, but it might get to like 99.99, but it's going to take a significant time to get it back towards 100%. So keep in mind, paying your rent and utility bills will not show up in your payment history because those are utilities and not debts. However, they can show up in derogatory marks, and I'll talk about that later. So the second highest impact factor is credit card utilization. What that is the amount of credit you're using out of the amount of available credit that you have. So for example, if all of your credit cards add up to $10,000 of potential credit and you're using $1,000, that means you have a 10% credit card utilization. It's best to keep this number below 10%, and honestly, you want to shoot for 0%. For credit card utilization, you want to keep it as close to 0% as possible. Keep this in mind though, that the date that it's reported to the credit bureau is not necessarily the date that your bill is due. So what that means is you can make all your payments on time, while still having a reported credit card utilization. So if you never carry a balance over, that doesn't mean that your credit card utilization score is going to be 0%. However, if you pay your credit card off as soon as the transaction goes through, you will always have a credit card utilization of 0%. That's not really something to stress over. It's only important if you're planning on applying for a credit card, a car loan, or a house loan within a few weeks, because a credit card utilization of 15% will be a lower score than a credit card utilization of 0%. It's really just something to keep in mind and find out the most optimal time to pay off your credit card depending on what you have upcoming the following month. Secondly, for credit card utilization, it changes from month to month. So whereas derogatory marks and payment history will have a long-term effect on your credit score, your credit card utilization is updated month to month. So you can have a 100% credit card utilization this month and your credit score be below 100 points where it would be at if you had a 0% credit card utilization the following month. The last high impact factor is derogatory marks. So like I said before, these are your medical bills or utility bills that were sold to a collections agency and are now showing up on your reports. That's not to say if you miss a medical bill and you don't pay them back, it's going to show up here. It's just that if you never pay them back, or if you pay them back after they already sold the lost revenue to collections. So derogatory marks can severely impact your credit score for up to 7 years. So it's something you want to avoid if at all possible. You might feel cornered, but it might be the better decision for you to pay the predatory internet or cable company than to have that payment sent to collections and having a lower credit score for the next 7 years. Because the amount of money you're going to have to pay on interest for potential loans might outweigh that $50 to $150 payment. For example, I have 2 derogatory marks in my credit scores. There are 2 medical bills that I was told were paid, and they turned out that they weren't actually paid. And my credit score as a result is sitting around the high 600s, whereas I predict it would be in the mid 700s if I didn't have those derogatory marks on my credit report. And just to explain what a collection is, if you have a utility company or a medical company that you owe a bill to and you don't pay it, they have to report that as a loss. So in order to make some of their money back, what they'll do is they'll sell that debt with pennies on the dollars to a collection agency. So if you have a $100 bill that you miss, they might sell it for $10 to a collection agency. This allows them to report a $90 loss on their taxes and get a tax write-off. And it also allows a collection agency to go on an attempt to collect that $100. So they stand to make a $90 profit, while the medical company can focus on, providing a medical service and lose less money than they would have lost. John Oliver actually has a really good video explaining how collection agencies work and how some of them are extremely predatory. I'll link that below. So a factor with medium impact on your credit score is your average credit age history, and that's kind of out of your control. So the key word here is average. For example, if you have a credit card that you've had for 5 years and that's your only loan, your average credit age is 5 years old. But let's say the next day you go and open up a new credit card. Your average age will immediately be cut down to 2.5 years, because instead of 5 years divided by 1, now it's 5 years divided by 2 credit cards. So you're at 2.5 years of average history. So what I suggest is after you buy your first card, if at all possible, or if there's a decent amount of time between you getting credit cards and buying your first card, I suggest front loading the amount of credit cards you open. So what that's going to do is it's going to later in life make it harder for your credit score to drop because you open up new accounts. So let's say you have 5 cards with 5 years of history that you all opened within 6 months of each other. So you're essentially sitting at an average credit history of 5 years. Now when you open up a new card, your score is not going to drop down to 2.5 years. It's going to drop down to 4 years and some change. So front loading your credit cards will also help out with the next factor, and that's the total opened accounts. The credit card bureaus want to see a good mix of different types of loans with the account. So what that means is they want to see a mix of credit cards, auto loans, and home loans. Typically, the credit bureaus like to see that you have 10 plus accounts open. In my opinion, that can cause more harm than good in this scenario, but it's something to keep in mind. So the last factor that impacts your credit scores are hard inquiries onto your credit score. So what these are is somebody asking or pulling for your credit score. This is to prevent people from applying for a lot of credit cards or loans at once. It doesn't lower your score a lot, maybe by 2 or 3 points, and it typically falls off anywhere between 1 month to 2 months after you made that hard inquiry. These factors that I just explained are all put into both of the models for the FICO and the Vantage score. Now, the weight of these factors are slightly different in each model, and they change with the iteration of whatever model the credit bureau company is using. Like anything else, your credit score is just another tool that you can use to build a better financial life. In my opinion, it's very important to know how it works in detail, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should try to utilize as much credit as possible or build the highest credit score as possible. That's a whole different concept for a whole other video. Now, it's important to understand that your credit score is fundamentally built to allow you to spend money that you do not have more easily. So I'll say that again. Your credit score is designed to allow you to get money that you do not have. So it is inherently a negative transaction. Just something to keep in mind when it comes into your credit score and loans and debt. So I hope you guys found this video informative. If not, or if you're confused, leave a question down in the comments below. I try to respond to every single comment that you guys leave, and I'll respond in detail if you ask a question about this video. Keep in mind, I am not a professional. I implore you to do your own research and to make decisions based off of your own knowledge base or a professional's advice. With that being said, I hope you guys really liked this video. Once again, like the video and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. It may be hard now, but it doesn't always have to be. Peace.